I feel like we should have more moon technology or some shit. You know what I'm saying? I think shit is like flying up from the ocean to the sky.
It's like surfing in some oil spillage. Inhaled like a whole bag of goose feathers.
I worry primarily about whether there are nightclubs in heaven.
I just have like all the same files in PST and JPEG, and some in whatever that like PhD or whatever that other format is. But like, yeah, I just have all the same files in like 2, maybe 3 different formats. You have so many different goddamn files.
Yeah, I have a monstrosity of files. It's both all of my music, which is like 30 albums last year, 6 albums this year. All of our podcasts is on my external hard drive. I have a huge My Videos folder. Those file sizes are insane.
Jesus Christ, I just draw shit, man.
And I do Photoshop too. I'm not like draw talented like you, but I have a bunch of Photoshop files.
Yeah, I'm guessing that like between that and all the music files, it's way more complicated than just, like I said, I just have all the same shit in PSD and JPEG, and I've got to clear out a bunch of the PSDs because they take up so much goddamn space. But like, yeah, I just have all the same shit in PSD and JPEG, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, those PSD files will take up a lot of space because of the multiple layers. I used to be bad at file names. I would just go like cool song or arts, and that was impossible to find and badly organized. So like I had to institute a system of like folders and folders and folders and backing up to my external hard drive regularly.
Yeah,
it's so meticulous.
Yeah, I've broken it up into like maybe 3 folders for several hundred files. Again, all at least in duplicate. All at least in 2 different formats. And I hope you all have enjoyed this discussion of file formats. We're returning to form, just talking about absolutely goddamn nothing before we're getting to the point about at least a minute in. And
you gotta have some stuff, some fade in.
Welcome back to Oh Well You Bastards. This is once again the podcast about nothing, and we're going back to our roots. We're going back to
just 2 dudes talking about politics and stuff.
Episode 1 and 2 format. We're like down to the setup. Even like we had a setup more in a different room and everything. But now we're 100% back to our roots. We're recording in Ian's room next to his computer and everything. It feels like it's a year and a half ago. That's how it feels right now. We're walking back in time.
Jack can reach my piano right now and play it if you wanted to, if it was on.
I mean, I couldn't play it. I could smash it. I could smash the keys, but I couldn't play it.
You could play that.
I could play the knuckle song if my right hand was free, but I'm using my right hand to hold booze.
Jack has a lemonade arita in hand.
Yeah, I am getting drunk, as is the old throwback tradition of this podcast. Ian is no longer drinking. Good for him. I hope he breaks the chain of this family's horrible drinking habits. I will not.
Yeah, I had some depressing booze habits. I wouldn't be a social drinker. I would drink too much on my own. Like, I would go to the liquor store, I would spend $50 and bring it home, and then just like drink multiple times a week, if not every day. So I realized it was getting unhealthy, and I cut off last September. I'm 6 months sober,
and I applaud you for that. That is a sensible and responsible and mature choice. I don't like to spend money on alcohol. I have between my jobs, for example, working on a tall ship, and like my habits, i.e. home brewing and other things like that, I tend to find easy, cheap access to alcohol. And there have been periods, not intermittent, where I have seen the ill fruit of my bad habits on alcohol, and I know that Ian has too. I feel like
we won't go into nitty-gritty here.
We won't go into the details, of course, but I feel like we have both seen each other's less than favorable moments interacting with alcohol. And so like we differ, but we don't argue in terms of alcohol. Ian is nobly completely sober, and I respect and appreciate that. I applaud him for those efforts. I know it's not always an easy thing to do. I've gone without alcohol for certain periods, but I feel like in my life I've reached a decent, at least somewhat decent balance of using alcohol in my life. I have a good tolerance in the last couple months at least. I've learned to hold to my limits. And so I think, I don't pressure him to drink. He doesn't pressure me not to drink. I think we've reached a pretty decent balance, and I have not made an embarrassing fool of myself with alcohol in the last couple months. So I think we've reached a pretty good balance.
We've reached a quiet agreement. I'm not going to be the uber straight edge kid I was in high school. I'm just like hanging around, drinking tons of sparkling water, making some music.
Yeah, nobody is who they were in high school.
Yeah, that's very true. I chose straight edge in high school because the people I wanted to be friends with were into metalcore and punk. And I was like, oh, cool. I don't have to drink to be cool now.
Yeah. And I wasn't exactly straight edge in high school. I just was not cool in high school. And so the people who were doing a lot of drugs and drinking and doing the sex stuff really did not want me as part of the equation. So I didn't really have to make the choice. I didn't have to be consciously anti-drugs, anti-alcohol, so on. I didn't have to be consciously anti-drugs, anti-alcohol, so on and so forth. That choice was very much made for me by the fact that I was fucking lame.
Should we transition to a new topic or keep elaborating on this?
I think we've pretty much ridden that out. Let's maybe transition to what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, we were sort of talking about politics and the healthcare system.
Much like how we were when we first decided to start doing this podcast about like what 15, 16 months ago, quite a while ago.
Yeah, somewhere around there. We had been thinking about, we could start a podcast. And then one night we were both drunk enough and said, okay, let's just go record. I have microphones.
This was back when Ian was drinking, and we were both about as drunk as I am right now.
Yeah, it was a good night. Unfortunately, we had to make the first 2 episodes private because there were some details.
I mean, like, it's 2 drunk people who have known each other since they were, born.
Yeah.
So we divulged possibly more than we should have, or more than was advisable, even like, amongst other family members, and also amongst ourselves. Our sober selves would probably have said, yeah, you don't need to publicize all that shit. And so we had to.
We just said we had to make episode 3 and episode 1, which I'm cool with. That was a really good episode.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like, as soon as we started doing guests, I'm proud. I was really proud of the episodes as soon as we started doing guests, which is why I'm really glad that we're getting back into this after a long while with just the 2 of us. Harkening back to the days when this podcast was good.
Yeah. I mean, we're gonna have to do some episodes of the 2 guys talking format because we can't count on a guest being here with everybody's crazy busy schedules now.
Oh yeah, everybody has like 8 different jobs now.
Yeah,
it's inescapable.
There's no career. You have like 5 to 6 things you do 10 hours a week.
Yeah.
And you may be an independent contractor as well.
Yeah, every job is still wired to the old economy, where you have one skill set that is wired exclusively for one job, and you have to market yourself for that, while also knowing that you have to have skill sets for 5 or 6 different jobs that also ask the same thing of you.
Yeah. So nowadays, you kind of have to know Photoshop and HTML and drive for Uber and donate plasma, maybe.
Yeah, proficient. The word is proficient. I don't know if I'm hitting these P's too hard, Ian. It'll be up to you.
Peter Piper picked a pair of pickled peppers.
I'm perfectly proficient in perfect Final Cut Pro. And in Microsoft Excel, I'm perfect in Microsoft Excel.
I'm very good at spreadsheets.
I'm very good at them spreadsheets.
I don't use that Microsoft program. I use LibreOffice because it's free, and I can crunch the numbers in that.
I can type 80 words a minute.
I do the typing test. I have my keyboard in Dvorak.
Yeah, this bit is getting sweaty. And a friend of mine, I use that term with a couple of friends who know that I do improv, but also are not familiar with improv. By the way, I do improv, but like I use
Nobody asked.
Yeah, yes, thank you. That was part of the bit. Thank you. But like, yeah, I was just casually mentioning like the phrase "the bit was getting sweaty," and they were saying like, "Is that an improv thing? Is that an improv thing to say the bit is getting sweaty? If not, you should coin it." And I was just saying to myself, and I just countered, yeah, I've known improv people for a good long while, and all I can say is that if you say something or introduce a new concept to improv people, they will pretend that they heard about it 3 years ago. That's just the reality of the situation.
When I tell my friends that you do improv, they're like kind of confused or astounded by it. And like, is that the case now that the improv classes have a lot of corporate people coming through?
I mean, yeah. To an extent, like I can't speak from certainty because, you know, I don't take a lot of classes. I don't believe in paying to do something so that you can do it better for free.
Yeah,
that sounds bad to me.
It does not add up.
Yeah, that shit doesn't add up. I've never gotten paid to do improv, and when I do, I'll start paying to take classes, but you know, not before.
Yeah, I think people use improv as a stepping stone. Like we talked about, just you and I, the improv to SNL pipeline.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to get into. Is like, you know, the heightened value of improv, which is why so many people pay to be a part of it. Like I'm not going to pay to be in it because I think that, you know, I've paid for a class here and there, but I have not, you know, bankrupted myself or put myself into debt like a lot of people do because I don't want to go gung-ho into improv because I think that that's cult status, and everybody says improv's a cult. BoJack Horseman says it's a cult, and when BoJack Horseman says it, that's when you got to back off. But like, you know, everybody who is anybody in comedy of the last like 20 years, from like Stephen Colbert and like Steve Carell and all the Steves to like Tina Fey, Amy Poehler, everybody up to like, you know, Keegan-Michael Key and Jordan Peele, like they came up in improv together. Everybody who is anybody in like popular like comedy, like scripted TV, movies, anything like that, has at least some traceable like major background in improv. And so like I want to have my voice out there. I want to be a part of it. I am like, you know, thanks to my team, Not Your Third Grade Teacher, who are like a lot of great friends of mine, I do have like a traceable footprint in San Diego improv, but I'm not gonna pay to be a bigger part of that. I'm just gonna keep grinding at it.
Pay to play doesn't make sense. I hated that in music when I was starting out.
Exactly.
And also I tried to add to your internet footprint by taping 2 of the Not Your Third Grade Teacher sets at Torquemoto Cafe on YouTube.
And thanks, I appreciate that. And let's put some links in this fucking episode.
Yeah, it'll be in the show notes if I finally set up a site for this.
Hell yeah.
I think it's time.
Or just like YouTube episode. Like we've put a lot of these up on YouTube.
Yeah, it's mostly gonna be YouTube, and maybe I'll figure out iTunes and Spotify again. I think I deactivated our distributor temporarily. Anyways, there will probably be a WordPress where you can find all the links that we discuss here.
Check us the fuck out. We're on fucking WordPress, bitch.
So where should we go next with this?
I don't know. Should we in honor of our first episode and returning to our first episode format, should we just rehash a conversation that we had 20 minutes before when we decided we should do a podcast?
Yeah. So the conversation about healthcare, pharmaceuticals, nuance.
Yeah. Yeah, you like, I believe the conversation started with you mentioning your your new blog and an essay, an in-depth essay that you were planning on writing on the topic of healthcare. And so why don't you elaborate on that first, and then we'll dive into it.
So I'll give the audience a little rundown here. I want to start a research-based blog where I tackle some topics that have been going on in my head, some niche things, some things that like my friends haven't heard as much about. I read a lot of articles. I try to read books. Anyways, first essay on there is called Doomsday Preppers and Climate Change. It connects the dots between those two disparate things and also analyzes the geopolitics of the climate change situation and where we're at right now, where we're going to be in the future. I also narrated an audio version of that, so it's an essay and a podcast, and I'm planning future topics right now. I started writing a second one today.
Right on. And so, refresh my memory, because I'm the one who's still drinking and you're not. What was, I mean, like, how did we initially like lead into the conversation that led to us thinking like, fuck, let's record a podcast again?
We were eating dinner. Jack made tacos, which were good. And we saw a pharmaceutical commercial on TV.
As you do.
And I had something to say about that because I've read into the topic.
Yeah.
U.S. and New Zealand are the only countries that allow pharmaceuticals to be advertised directly to the consumer.
Right.
Usually it's the doctors who know all the information about it.
Right. Yeah, and like you mentioned that that you were covering that in a future essay on your new site, and I was wondering whether you meant like pharmaceuticals and pharmaceutical advertising as a whole, or or pharmaceuticals specifically relating to STDs, which that ad was, and it was between that ad.
Yeah, I'll answer that.
And an ad for like Truvada, which is PrEP. It's an anti-HIV sort of medication. So I was asking whether or not you were referring to the broader concept.
Broader concept.
Yeah. The broader concept of pharmaceutical medication advertisements, or whether or not you were referring to specifically that, and then we got into a further conversation about it.
Yeah, so I'm not going to be addressing PrEP or STD or any specific medications. I'm going to be talking mostly about the advertising and the system and the policies in the U.S. that relate to this and what people are trying to change, the pros and cons, because there are a few different things going on, and it's not easy to say, like, oh, it's good or it's bad. It's not a simple answer.
Yeah, and that led into a more complicated conversation between the two of us. I agree. You know, I'm like both of us have a very, you know, front seat experience with both the positives and negatives, let's say, of pharmaceuticals, and you know, like the constant emphasis on development in that field, based on, you know, our front row experience with chronic illness. I think we would say is a good thing. The constant push for better medication, for more medication, is good, but the push for more medication that people buy is a little bit different. And so I, you know, even though you were pushing for the idea of nuance, which I think is a good thing, I had some reservation in this conversation about the usage, the implementation of the word nuance.
Yeah. So I guess Jack was trying to convey that, and I wasn't getting exactly what he was saying. I was trying to rephrase it, and we weren't coming to the basis of it exactly. I guess Jack's heard in discussions that people use the word nuance to shut down a conversation, which I'm not as familiar with.
I mean, yeah, it's one of many words like reasonable or like a theory that I often hear cited in this context is horseshoe theory,
which Jack and I differ on our opinions on horseshoe theory as well.
Yeah, it's bullshit. But yeah,
it's right.
Yeah, yeah. Podcast time, baby.
Disagreements.
Yeah, but yeah, and I just generally think like when you get into murky, complicated issues, that is the time to wade knee deep, waist deep, neck deep, just completely submerge yourself into those murky, complicated subjects. And a lot of the time, people will see that and pull back and say, no. We need more nuance on this issue, which is a way of saying let's just not talk about it.
And I get your concerns and the people you're talking about. What I'm trying to do with the writing on my website, amateurambidexter.com, is provide nuance without using the word nuance. I'm going to throw like a lot of different facts at you, some news stories that you haven't heard about, some criticism of those news stories and corrections, and it's all going to form a cohesive idea, but there's going to be a lot going on.
Yeah. And that's what I was trying to get to in our discussion is the difference. Like, there is a quintessential difference between. It especially goes for loaded words, but there's a quintessential difference between the usage of words and the essence of words. Like, you are getting at the essence, the meaning of the word nuance with those kinds of essays, with those kinds of ideas. People use the word in its most surface definition to shut down certain conversations. And so what you're doing, I'm not at all opposed to. I'm not opposed to the concept of nuance. I'm opposed to the usage of the word nuance that means, this word, this topic is complicated, so let's just not talk about it.
Yeah, and you brought up the situation of Israel and Palestine, which is complex and goes back a while, but people just throw up their hands and say, well, I can't do anything.
Yeah, it's complicated. And most Americans, myself included, do not know enough about Israel. That is, and you know what? That's intentional.
Yeah.
Most people in the United States do not know a fucking thing. Like, they can get ankle deep on Israel. But you have to wade into that conversation. You have to just roll up your sleeves and get into it. And between there are people who argue in bad faith, who are 100% just in the pocket of AIPAC, so on and so forth. There are just these snake handling, insane, psychopathic fucking evangelicals who in any other context would spit at a Jewish person. But in this context would absolutely lick the boots of Israel because they believe that it fulfills their apocalyptic vision. Who will argue in bad faith that shit, I lost my train of thought.
Okay, I kind of am picking up what you're saying. Yeah. My take is most Americans can't even point to Israel or Palestine on a map.
Yeah, and that's a problem.
So I don't think people are necessarily like licking the boots of Israel. I don't think they know enough. Government officials do.
Yeah, I'm talking about government officials.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about like the American public.
Generally speaking, I'm talking about government officials, and I'm talking about the most recent example I can think of somebody who in the public eye had the guts to talk about Israel in a critical sense is Ilhan Omar. The U.S. representative, the newly elected U.S. representative Ilhan Omar, who dared to just barely mention that AIPAC money may, influence U.S. politics, and everybody descended on her. Right, left, centrist, everybody just descended on her and said that she was anti-Semitic, and just like one of the youngest Islamic, representatives in this country is just completely shit on. And like, even, I am 100% in Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's corner, but she broke ranks, and she still like was, quote unquote critical of Ilhan Omar's anti-Semitism, even though it was a completely reasonable criticism of Israel. And yeah,
I haven't heard that much about it. There's only so much one person could pay attention to.
Yeah.
And I decided to do research instead of like weighing in on Meghan McCain or whatever.
I don't give a fuck about Meghan McCain. What has she done that merits attention?
Yeah.
I don't give a fuck about Meghan McCain.
I just hear the name and then I scroll down. That's it.
Yeah, but like actual representatives, people who write our laws, I try to pay attention on that. And so like
I know Ocasio-Cortez is doing the Green New Deal.
Yeah.
And I know of Ilhan Omar, but I haven't read into it, and that's by design.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's 100% by design. She dared, like, the initial exchange that broke the whole dam of onslaught onto her was just her mentioning that AIPAC is all about the Benjamins, baby. And, AIPAC is a fucking lobbying group. It's a pro-Israel lobbying group. And so to say, yeah, a lobbying group uses money to influence politicians.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that was an anti-Semitic statement.
Well, certain people think that anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism are the same thing,
and
that's where the murky territory comes in.
And that's a deliberate conflation. That's by design.
Yeah.
And like, we were just talking to our dad earlier, and he willingly admitted, which I admire. We were watching a documentary, and he willingly admitted that he did not know enough about Israel and Palestine to fairly weigh in on it. And that's
a good thing to say. Most people won't admit that.
And that's a good thing to say. Yes, it's a good thing to say, but also on this specific issue, that is by design. It is intentional that generally the American people are so both inept and intimidated by the concept of talking about Israel and Palestine that they just don't. And that's what I was talking about in terms of the word nuance, is just these bad faith arguers who say that we need nuance in these conversations, especially about Israel, and therefore, these conversations about Israel should not be had, because that the word nuance in that context is only brought up when there is even just the slightest even the slightest criticism of Israel is just, no, we need nuance on this issue. Which is just to say, let's not talk about this issue.
Yeah, I think, what was I thinking of? It might be a digression.
This is
all tangents.
We've done 20 some odd episodes of this. It's all digressions.
Yeah. So let me see if I could pare it down. I'm pondering what I should be saying about the issue. Yeah. So Americans, well, everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody wants yes or no answers, black and white, I can or I can't. It's this or that. They don't want middle ground. And I guess you could also use the word nuance to say like, oh yeah, there's middle ground. I can't deal with that. I can't handle that.
Yeah. It's Dr. King's white moderate.
Yeah.
I don't want to like really travel to the black and white extremes of this issue, so I would rather just hang out in the gray and declare no preference either way, as opposed to what nuance should actually mean, which is I have traveled to the black and white extremes of this issue,
and then I found out it was more complicated. So here's my answer now.
Yeah, I have found an actual moral conclusion based on assessing the complete extremes and the in-betweens of the issue. Some people just want to say, yeah, I didn't want to delve into the extremes, so I'll just stay kind of gray and not declare anything.
But my position, and it's a little bit of a disagreement, is that the world is so messed up over the past, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years.
30, 40, 50, 60, 70,
Yeah,
80.
it just keeps adding up. It's how much do you expect people to cover with their limitations and their level of education and their socioeconomic status?
Yeah.
And how much time they have to read into issues versus us, where we have time to analyze this stuff.
Yeah, I don't expect a depth of coverage or a depth of education, because again, what I said in Israel is regarding Israel is again what I would hold to regarding all issues, is that ignorance is by design.
Mm-hmm.
Ignorance is by design, and I'm not anywhere near the most enlightened on all of these issues. I'm nowhere close. I would encourage empathy, and I think that true nuance, the meaning of nuance, which is what we're getting at, should be motivated by empathy. It should not be motivated by some sense of just horseshoe theory centrist, liberal idea of oh well, let's view both ideas, equally. Let's view, Nazism and socialism separate, individually, and see which one is better. It's that, you evaluate both extremes by empathy, and that you come to your rational conclusion based on your relation to other people.
Mm.
And that's the general sense that I come to.
The harsh world thing is that people are naturally empathetic, but when they're driven to a certain extent and the media landscape is horrible and things are going wrong in their life, they have to focus inward and say, okay, I got to survive myself. I can't think about other people right now. And I just don't have that in me.
Yeah, and again, it comes back to the same issue of engineered ignorance. It's people are designed, the culture that we live in is designed to run counter to basic human empathy.
Mm-hmm.
You are running a track that is designed to ignore basic empathy. You are running a track that is designed to ignore the plight of Palestinians.
Yeah.
That is designed to run counter to the plight of all the different places that the U.S. is bombing. You're trained not to relate to all of these things.
And you're supposed to hate refugees. That's what Fox News tells you.
You're supposed to hate refugees. You're supposed to hate the working class. You are supposed to hate all of these people who
you're supposed to believe in falsehoods.
Right. Yes, you are supposed to doubt everything, and that you're supposed to doubt everything that comes from people who should be your allies. And that is the old tried and true method from basically, I'm speaking in broad strokes, but it comes from the North Atlantic slave trade onward of, people at the bottom should see each other as allies, but are seeing each other as enemies because of a way that society has been engineered by the top class to keep people warring at each other.
It's the tyranny of small differences too. That you hate your neighbor more than somebody across the globe. At least that's what the Democrats and the leftists are on. And then the right wing hates the terrorists.
Right. Yeah.
Middle Eastern bombings, foreign instability, empathy, American individualism, and the American dream.
I mean, all of this shit is engineered. All of this shit is engineered by a ruling class. It has been since the 14-somethings, and that ruling class has more or less, kept going unimpeded for the last, holy shit, 600 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. It looked at a new land full of new resources and thought, holy shit, we need new people to work this land. It found a different land full of people who look different and said, hey, we can dehumanize these people to turn them into a cheap workforce and then ship them over to this different land. And so that has all compounded over the course of 400 or 500 years. And so lost my train of thought, but you get the gist.
Yeah, I could continue on with that. This is probably something I'm going to write about in the next few months. It could become a topic, is the Arabic African slave trade, which could have killed more people than the slave trade across the Atlantic to the U.S.
Yeah.
just by the unfortunate closeness of the two areas. That like in the Arabic countries, they amassed wealth faster. They invented a lot of things, so they were able to bring slaves over the Sahara Desert to do all their work.
Yeah, and I'm the titular, insufferable white liberal who says that he's taken one black studies class, but like I know full well that like African kings, so on and so forth, traded their people as slaves in the early days of the North Atlantic slave trade. And then once their people were depleted, they realized that there was no one left to defend them, to defend their country. And, all of these European countries absolutely steamrolled them and enslaved everybody.
Yeah. So I have another topic to transition to that has to do with Africa. China colonizing Africa. They're funding the infrastructure projects, and people in I think Kenya or Tanzania are dealing with racism for the first time because they've always lived in a majority black nation, and now that the Chinese are coming in and are in power, they're abusing the workers, calling them the N-word, so on and so forth.
You got to dodge the shit for so long, and now here it is. Yeah, but also I everything is so goddamn interconnected. I would say that I don't think any African nation entirely gets to dodge colonialism.
No, it's been the proving ground for that.
It's
centuries.
Some countries didn't get blindsided by it as much as others did, but I would say it's pretty fair to assume that every country had to deal either directly or indirectly with some degree of the backlash and utter tailspin of colonialism that Europe left Africa with. Yeah, and I remembered my train of thought from a minute ago. It's just like capitalism in its early stages dehumanizing people to either take their land or take them from their land to use as a cheap workforce has mutated into its ultimate form, which is we are reaching a boiling point of economic and ecological disaster, utter catastrophe on both fronts, which says at that point we have to decide who is or isn't getting on the boat, and it's still the same people at the top, and they are going to say, I mean, it's uncomfortable. It's an unfortunate reality of the situation, but the people who have always been at the bottom since the inception of this particular system 500, 600 years ago are still going to have to be the people who are, not going to get on the boat. Mm-hmm. They're going to have to be the ones who are left behind. I don't like it. You don't like it. But
yeah, I wrote an essay about climate disasters and how that's current and not the future.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's at the door. It's not even knocking. It's busting down the fucking door at this point.
It's here. Venice, Miami, Pacific Islands are being swallowed. The permafrost is thawing in Alaska and Siberia. We're having stronger hurricanes. Wildfires are blazing around the world, not just California, the whole Western U.S., Chile, Greece, where else? Portugal had wildfires in 2017 or 2018.
Yep.
And that's caused by the excessive heat of global warming. It's creating a drier climate from what I know.
Yeah.
And we're having hotter summers. The fire seasons are lasting longer.
Oh, yeah. California,
more timber to burn.
Yep. And so the hard truth is, this is the thing that I've come to terms with in the last year or so, is that Trump getting reelected is not the scariest thing in my mind right now. Because, as horrific as the southern border wall is, as a totem to racism, and exclusionism, and as horrifying as the domestic implementations of it are, like separating people from their families, putting children in fucking concentration camps, as horrifying as all those things are, they are not the end goal.
A lighter note, did you read the news article that Mexicans have been stealing parts of the wall?
I have read that. But yeah, back to my point is that is not the end goal. The end goal is, this is a stop. This is a weigh-in point where the point is getting the American people used to the idea of building a wall to exclude people, so that they are more used to the idea of shutting people out when they are drowning, when they are burning to death.
Even if there's anybody listening to this who's on the right wing, putting a wall...
No, nobody who's still listening to this.
But I'm going to entertain the hypothetical here.
All right.
If you think that we need to keep brown immigrants out of our country, the wall isn't the answer. There's a river going on the Texas border that you're going to have to build behind. The costs are going to increase. Landowners are going to fight the eminent domain.
And Mexico is going to.
Yeah, of course. And so if you want more border security, you hire more border patrol agents, which they can't hire because nobody wants to do the job.
Yeah, except for fucking jackbooted human thumbs.
Yeah, and there's
with Punisher tattoos.
Well, there's very few of them that apply too, because you're out in the desert in 110-degree heat. You have to speak English y Español, and you have to save people's lives and also deport them. Yeah.
But yeah, mostly the people who get attracted to that job are the kind of people who
former military service.
Yeah, I was gonna say the human thumbs with Punisher tattoos who kick over the water that is left by border angels, so that people crossing the border, die of dehydration.
Yeah, border angels and races are
fucking monsters.
Well, yeah, border angels and races give me a little bit of hope that they're doing good work. And they're getting supplies to the people who need them. Unfortunately, right-wingers are tarnishing them, or Border Patrol agents are poking holes in them.
Yeah, literally kicking over the canteens of water that they leave for people so that, people crossing the border die of dehydration. But, this is an issue that we require some nuance on.
Nuance.
Nuance! Nuance!
Okay, so things that people from outside of California might not be aware of. We've had record rain and snowfall, and there was snow in the desert where the immigrants were crossing. Yep. So freezing was now a hazard for people who take that journey.
Yep. Freezing and burning, on top of the old school issues, which were, exposure to heat and dehydration, which is why a bunch of, border patrol guys kicked over a bunch of things of water, assholes. Exposure to heat, dehydration. Now they have exposure to cold to worry about, which is great.
And snowfall, hypothermia.
Yeah. I'm all too grateful for all of this precipitation for the state of California and its, ongoing.
We've been eating it.
Ongoing drought issue, and every summer it's been on fire in just increasingly apocalyptic amounts. So the precipitation in general is good. The snowpack is good, but the additional thing for
the weather hazard,
the additional thing for people crossing the border to worry about is not the thing that I'm most thankful for.
Yeah,
far and away.
Some blessings, some curses.
Yeah,
both happen at once.
If only we had a more humane system for people to cross the border, maybe this wouldn't be so much of a concern, but here we are.
Yeah. I think the issue, immigration, is more complicated than like the news addresses.
Right.
Because legal immigration, while it's the path that is preferred for most Americans and for immigrants themselves, they want to come here legally if they can, if they could get accepted.
Oh yeah, if they have the option, they're obviously going to come through that way, but that option is so limited.
Yeah, the United States will only accept so many immigrants from so many countries, and it's costly to move here too. It's not cheap. Even if you're crossing illegally, it's going to be a big expense to get across the border by a coyote.
Yeah, maybe if we had a better minimum wage, that would be, a little incentive. But But okay, like you mentioned coyotes, but back when I worked at Goodwill, about a month before I quit my job, there was, an accident. I won't say it was my fault because it was, but I fell. I got taken down by a 300-pound bin of clothes and knocked on my ass, and I got a pretty deep bone bruise on my knee and had to spend like 2 or 3 weeks working on the dock. And so I got to overhear a lot of shit that the drivers used to say that I didn't hear before because I was always, spending my off time in the bathroom or in the break room or whatever. But I overheard a friend of mine, like a fellow driver, like a driver who I worked with a couple times, say, yeah, 7 times. They never caught me though. And I'm not going to drop the guy's name, but yeah, I learned through future conversations that that guy used to be a coyote smuggling people across the border, and apparently he did it 7 times and was never caught.
Yeah,
he was a very different kind of truck driver at one point.
So truck driving, it's something that I considered, but then
Yep.
But then I kind of gave up on it.
I mean, yeah, for now. You've given up on it for now.
Yeah, I played American Truck Simulator. I watch a lot of the Big Rig Travels YouTube channel while I'm working.
Big Rig Travels.
Trucking through the night.
We're gonna do what they say can't be done.
Convoy. But anyways.
Convoy.
Yeah, I guess I'm just concerned that trucking's not a career that's worth the time to go into because it's going to be automated away, or at least Silicon Valley is trying really hard to automate away all the trucking jobs.
They're trying to automate everything away. Come on.
Yeah,
If
single thing.
If they had their way, artists and musicians would not exist anymore.
I met somebody the other night who's actually automating jobs and like kind of close to my age, working on the user experience of touchscreens that would replace bank tellers. So automated counting cash for the old people that still go into the banks. Everybody else just uses ATMs or debit cards now.
Right. So basically what she's doing, just with more steps.
Yeah.
Tellers,
understandably, they could be automated. I just don't want people losing their jobs if we could avoid it.
Right. Of course. And like, there is the whole issue to wade into regarding automation because, in a sense, it is the Marxist dream of like, waiting until capitalism has developed to the point where its spoils can be divided amongst people and it has developed a replacement for the workforce. And so
a value-added tax gives us UBI, and that's Andrew Yang's plan.
Yeah.
And I like Andrew Yang, but I'm surprised that the socialists don't like him at all. Like, that's what I've noticed online is everybody saying, oh, $1,000 a month, that's just how much rent is going to go up afterwards.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, I think that argument would be an oversimplification, but I do think that, like, generally speaking, the implementation, his implementation of UBI is not so great. And like
he's doing more math than Bernie Sanders, though.
He's doing more math, yeah. But I'm generally sort of critical of technocrats who campaign on a one issue ballot.
Yeah, I think he's advancing the issue. I don't think he's going to win. I'm going to vote for him in the primary, most likely. I may change my mind. The thing is, I don't like Bernie Sanders' free college plan. I don't think college is the answer for every American. I don't think you're guaranteed a job. I think to do it, you'd have to fire so many admins to drive down the cost to where it's affordable to put everybody through college.
I don't think it's the most important thing to put everyone through college. I do think that free access to education, that being an entirely free option, is a good thing. I do not agree on the terms of free education is the way to make everyone have a profitable job. I don't agree on that point.
I think there are a few answers. I want more people to go into trades, or at least be encouraged to in high school, because you can make a better living and as say a plumber than you can with certain college degrees nowadays.
But yeah, I do support even if I won't vote for them in the primary, I do support the concept of of candidates who campaign solely to force a specific issue into the limelight, especially because, generally speaking, there are only like 2, maybe 3 issues that popular politics in this country will talk about every campaign cycle.
Yeah.
So if during a major like presidential campaign year, people will campaign to just force a certain issue into the limelight, that I'm generally in favor of that, because Andrew Yang, even though his model for UBI is not the best and he doesn't really have anything else to campaign on other than that, I'm still in favor.
People are trying to make him the circumcision candidate now.
Yeah, and I'm not in favor of that, because that's derailing the one thing that he got into this campaign to promote. But I support him in that one thing, trying to force that issue into the limelight, much like ever since 2016, Bernie Sanders has been grinding to make Medicare for all a major political issue, and no other Democratic candidate would have said Medicare for all as a part of their platform in 2016. But now every candidate is making that part of their platform, and they'll decide for themselves what Medicare for all means, quote unquote, when they become front runners. But just the fact that phrase is big is entirely because of Bernie Sanders. And so Andrew Yang being the champion.
I'd like to
for
say
UBI.
my position, if I could have a moment.
Yeah, go for it.
So with the healthcare system in the U.S., it's also a system that's ridden with bloat. There's a lot of paper pushers. There's a lot of jobs we don't exactly need for healthcare to work. In healthcare, in pharmaceutical development, there's something called Eroom's Law. I read about it in the book New Dark Age by James Bridle. It's the opposite of Moore's Law. Moore's Law says that semiconductors have in price every year or so. Opposite happens in healthcare. Costs explode for pharmaceutical creation for who knows what reason. And we need to address those issues if we're going to solve the healthcare problem. I don't want to just balloon the costs and raise the debt. We have to think these issues through. That's my position.
Yeah. And that, that's part of my issue with the fact that now for 2020, every Democratic candidate has quote unquote Medicare for all as part of their platform, is that each and every one of them gets to decide what Medicare for all means. Whereas, some of them will say that it means, full-blown universal health care, free at point of service. And some of them will say, well, I think that poor people should have savings accounts and that should help pay for health care. And so those are the extremes. And so, I'm sorry, I'm being too loud, but and so, the nuances like that will be hashed out as that actual legislation comes to the floor.
The changes that are made have effects that can't exactly be foreseen or aren't predicted accurately. Obama wanted to get everybody on health care, so the Affordable Care Act came along, but most people are paying more for health care than they used to in this situation, in this environment that we have. So I'm in favor of universal health care. I just don't know what's the best solution here. What's the best of both worlds? How are we going to cut down the cost if we decide everybody's health care is just going to be paid for?
It's cut fucking military spending. We spend.
Good luck on that one.
It's not the popular suggestion among conservatives or liberals, but among democratic socialists, which hopefully are actually riding a tide into 2020, 2024, 2028. Hopefully that is our political reality in the coming future.
Yeah,
but
I want to see the defense spending go down.
Considerably.
I don't see it happening anytime soon. America still thinks they're the policemen of the world and is sending troops everywhere.
It's our job to be the moral arbiters of everything, and
bring freedom to struggling countries, right?
And that hasn't borne any negative fruit thus far. So we're just gonna keep fucking doing it.
Weapons of mass destruction. 9/11.
Weapons of mass democracy.
Ride the bomb.
Ride the
To some rock and roll.
Slim Pickens riding his ass into fucking Syria or whoever we're gonna bomb next.
Ride the McNuke while drinking a Budweiser.
While drinking a Budweiser. But yeah, like we spend more on our military than the next, 6, 7 countries who are top spenders in their military budgets combined. So we could cut even a fifth of that and fund pretty much every social program that you and I both agree that we want.
Yeah, that's true.
And it wouldn't even be like a thing.
So I'm running a little short on time. I'm supposed to go film an emo band show, and
wow, weird flex, but okay.
Yeah. So I'm gonna have to cut this off prematurely. It's just going to be an hour-long episode, not 3 hours like some of our old episodes.
Oh my God, it's only going to be an hour-long podcast? How will our fans, cope?
Yeah, I think they'll be pissed at us.
There'll be riots in the streets.
They'll be coming for our heads.
You know what? I'm ready for it at this point. Come and get me.
Yeah.
You bastards.
I'm ready to fight.
Oh, well.
'Cause I bench what he is.
Just play us out on fucking Marlon Brando.
Feel like Marlon Brando. I feel like Marlon Brando. I'm feeling.
All right, that'll do it.